I was widowed by Gregg Allman 9 years ago. And I just got off the phone with a friend who was widowed 5 years ago. And I've spoken with thousands of grieving people now, a lot of widows and widowers and people who have lost their children. And what I have found time and time again is that people who do not get the support that they need, around 5 years, things start getting really brutal and dark because now you have compounded years of lack of support, lack of validation, lack of being witnessed or helped in your greatest time of need and suffering and grief. And you also have compounded years of grieving all of the relationships that you had and the people that you thought were going to show up for you. For me, it was about 99% of the people, friends, relatives, colleagues, just quit speaking to me in my first year of widowhood with no explanation. We just never spoke again. A couple of them called many years later to apologize, but most of them did not. And so I was grieving all of these relationships. And what I have learned too is that if you have a family of origin or a friend group community that just totally neglects and abandons you in your time of grief, and or if they shame and blame you for how you grieve, if they invalidate you, if they seem to be more put out, like they're inconvenienced by the ways that you've been changed rather than empathizing with how you've been changed, then a lot of times that was already a family dynamic or a community dynamic that was happening in your childhood that you may not have even known or understood, because most of us don't go to therapy or support groups or seek out help until we have these major tragedies, major losses. So it's like you're going to the therapist or the support group to talk about your husband or wife or child died, and you're finding out in real time in this dark space about your childhood wounds, and you're starting to learn, consciously see dynamics. And maybe a lot of us are people pleasers, and a lot of us have been the person that people turned to for support, and we uplifted others, and we were the ones who cooked for others or showed up when they got sick or whatever it was. And now the roles have been reversed, and we actually have needs. We are expressing need maybe for the first time in our life, and nobody is reciprocating what we've been doing for a lifetime. And man, the rage, I was afraid of my own rage, and I had such shame and guilt and fear around how angry and mean I could be. I would just be in my house alone just screaming. I didn't know I could scream that loud. I didn't know I could be that angry. And I can talk about these things now because I have been in therapy for 8 years consistently. I've done countless support groups, maybe 8 or more. I've talked to thousands of people grieving. And so I know that nothing I share here, I'm not alone in this. And I've learned, I won't get into the details of the neuroscience or the psychology, but I've learned about how what manifests as rage and anger is fear and grief. That's what it is. And to 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 be to be having a hard time even brushing your teeth or putting a frozen burrito in the microwave and nobody is showing up. For most people, there's no casseroles. There's nobody's helping take the trash to the curb. No one's helping clean the house, and no one is usually checking in consistently or tangibly supporting most grieving people. We are a grief illiterate culture, and we are not a trauma informed culture. When I think about the ways that people gossiped about me in those years, how my trauma and grief and caregiver burnout was manifesting, I marvel sometimes at what the human spirit can survive. And the thing is, I almost didn't survive. I almost did not make it out of earlier widowhood alive, whether that was going to be by my own hand or substance or recklessly driving, drinking and driving, not wearing my seatbelt. I can't say the word because the algorithm will block it, but passive suicidal ideation is when someone won't do it to themselves, but they will speed and not wear their seatbelt because they don't really care if they stay here because they're in so much pain. And I feel compelled by God, by my divine assignment to speak because I needed to hear the things that I'm saying. So I want to talk about some of the things that I did to save my own life, and not only save my own life, but I said to my therapist recently, nobody prepared me and nobody talked about how, excuse my French, fucking weird it would be to experience peace and joy and hope and faith and gratitude and enjoyment again after living with this dark, shadowy boulder on top of my soul and my heart for so many years, and just panic all of my childhood wounds, all of my complexes, all of the painful things that happened to me as a child that my brain split off as a complex to deal with later, showed up in grief. So that when I get sick, especially in those earlier years, getting sick is a huge trigger for me, and it makes me experience this panic of like, I'm alone in the world. I'm alone in the world. I'm not okay. I'm not safe. My survival is at stake. That's what it feels like in my body. I mean, I've worked through this now with a lot of therapy and support, but a lot of people don't understand what's happening to them. So your panic is valid and normal. It is not normal. It is common, but not normal for you to go through a major tragedy alone and judged, blamed, shamed, gossiped about, etc. So let's talk about some of the ways that I saved my own life and found joy and faith and peace again. And this is a lifelong practice. I'm human, right? This is the emotions ebb and flow, but I have resources and validation now that help me to get back on track when I fall off a bit. So one of the most important things I ever did to save my own life was I got to a point where I was so far gone past being unwell that it really was like, if I don't do something, I'm not going to survive this. And because my situation is a little bit unique because my husband was a public figure, so he didn't have a lot of close friends. So I didn't really have many people to reach out to. And so I started, this was probably maybe 2021. I started Googling who has ever said that they were inspired by the Allman Brothers Band? Who has ever said that they love Gregg Allman's music or they toured with Gregg Allman? I started calling anybody and everybody, photographers, road crew, musicians, celebrities, and saying, I am so deeply unwell and I need help. And I wasn't talking about money. I was talking about, I would say to them, I need human connection. I need to be able to share memories about this man that I love so much. I need to be able to talk about my experience. And people, that the gossip, the grapevine got really loud around that time. I was calling everybody. And I remember one very well-known photographer, we started the conversation with him saying, oh, I wouldn't have my career if it weren't for Gregg. And then when I told him what I was calling about, he said, I don't know why you're calling me. Nobody's going to care about what happened to you. And that answer is, in a nutshell, really the majority of the experience, the experiences that I had when I reached out to people. I called, I just kept going. People they kept telling me, you need to go to a mental hospital. You need, there was so much. We are such a grief illiterate, trauma misinformed culture that we are not taught how to witness what extreme tragedy and illness and grief look like. And most people are, by design in our culture, pretty spread thin and have all of their own responsibilities, that they don't really have the capacity to show up for us in the way that we need and deserve. So that's the first thing, is I just kept asking. I accepted that people were going to gossip about me and call me crazy and attention seeking and all kinds of things, right? There are all kinds of things. And it was worth it to save my own life. So I kept going, I kept going. And it was just slammed door after slammed door. And I found a nonprofit who offers mental health resources. And again, I can't say the word because the algorithm will block it out. So suicidal prevention. And they connected me with a support person. And I saw her for a few weeks, and she was good, but she introduced me to another support person at this nonprofit. This she was not my therapist, but she was a retired therapist and she was trained in mental health support. This woman wound up listening to me for free for like 1 to 2 hours a week for several months. This woman, I've said to her before, you saved my life. And she says, no, you saved your own life. You came to me. You sought me out. You spoke truth about your experience. So that was a huge turning point in my life. And the more grieving people I spoke to online and the more support groups that I went to, the more I realized I'm not crazy and I'm not alone in how I feel, and I don't need to be ashamed or embarrassed about how I feel. And one of the main things that I wish that somebody had told me very early on is that when you do the things that we know to do or experts tell us to do to heal, whether that's yoga, exercise, meditation, sunshine, healthy food, support groups, therapy, breath work, visualization, art, dance, massage, acupuncture. I mean, I have done it all. I have done it all. I have invested every resource and gone without basic needs for years to save my own life. And I wish that somebody had told me, doing those things does not mean that you are going to feel better while you're doing them. In fact, you will likely feel very terrible while you're doing them, because if you are showing up at a yoga class or a sound bath, or you're putting on a guided meditation on your headphones while you're in a trauma response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, if you are deeply bereaved, if you are deeply depressed and panicked and anxious, it is not going to feel good to be in your body. And we all have to kind of figure out what works for us, and to understand that it's like we're building a sandcastle, and it's just this fucking long, hard slog of adding a little bit of sand at a time and a little bit of sand. I'm not saying this to scare anybody, because we are all on our different paths. And I had a whole bunch of other crazy hard things happen in the wake of my husband's death that, not everybody deals with. So my situation is my own, but I am about to hit the 9-year anniversary of his death in a few days. And this is the first year that I feel like the fruits of my labor, that all of this investment was worth it, because it took so many years where I was like, how is it his birthday and nobody's calling me? How is it Christmas and nobody's calling me? How is it the anniversary of his death and nobody's calling me? Like, forget casseroles and tangible support. There was just silence for so many years. For the most part, there have been a few angels, here and there in my life. Shout out to Alice Mensch if you're watching this. There have been some angels and some, but it wasn't. A lot of people learn that it's oftentimes the people you think are going to be your support network will not be, and the people you never expected to be supportive will be the most supportive. And sometimes that's strangers. A lot of times that's strangers. They're not so emotionally invested, and they're able to witness the depth of your pain and suffering without trying to fix you. Because a lot of times our friends and family, they just want to fix us And sometimes it's loving. Sometimes it's loving that they want us to feel better because they love us. And sometimes it's selfish because they want us to feel better so that they don't have to support us. We're all dealing with a lot of different kind of personalities in our grief, right? So you just keep doing the hard, uncomfortable things. And what I have found also is that there has to be a part of you that believes that you're worthy of care. And again, if you had any kind of messaging in your childhood that you are not worthy of care and love and being invested in and being prioritized and nurtured and nourished and loved, then that wound itself can prevent people from getting the help that they need. And you deserve help. You deserve support. You deserve for somebody to make you a cup of tea, to make you soup, to take your trash to the curb, to watch your children, to help you clean up your house, to just sit next to you and not try to fix you, to remind you of memories of your person that died, to share photos, and you deserve all of that. You do. And let me think of what else. Yeah, I mean, it also really is, it gets to a point where I just was forced. I didn't have the option anymore to care what people think, even though I was deeply conditioned, and especially as women, deeply conditioned. We are biologically wired for human connection, and there's a survival instinct that connection is survival. And so when you are abandoned, neglected on your own, it really does feel like a threat to survival. And I think I'll wrap it up here. I honestly could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. It is my greatest passion that people know that it may take a long time and it will be incredibly hard, and there will be real demons and shadows and wounds that you have to face if you are somebody who has not only lost somebody dear to you, and if you haven't gotten the support and validation that you need, which most of us don't. Um, I am sending you so much love. I encourage you to start Googling. It can take a while. Start Googling support groups around you, online support groups, Instagram accounts. I loved Megan Devine at Refuge in Grief was one of the first accounts that was really helpful for me. She has a book, It's Okay That You're Not Okay, but reading can be very hard in early days of grief. I highly recommend Internal Family Systems, aka parts work therapy. It took me 5 years and 5 therapists before I found a good fit that actually started making a difference. For all those early years, I was intellectualizing and understanding cerebrally my pain and suffering and grief and childhood wounds, but I didn't feel any better. And parts work changed my life. Parts work is like, I have all of these different, we all have these different parts of us, right? My 2-year-old self, my 5-year-old self, maybe the self when your parents got divorced, or right when my husband died, or the caregiver. Like, there's all these different parts of us that we're carrying around, and they're all being impacted by whatever is happening within the presence. And so trauma healing is a lot of working to expand the capacity to hold all of these parts. So I still have my wounds. It's like I still get panicky in the middle of the night sometimes. I still have anxiety attacks. I still get the blues. I still get depressed. I still get angry, and I still get resentful sometimes when I think about, things that have happened through the years. But I've worked on it enough now that I know that pretty much all of my messy, uncomfortable feelings are grief and fear. And so I have very specific, the RAIN practice, I was going to say I have very specific practices to help me work through that so that I can get back to feeling more grounded and regulated and in my body. And the RAIN practice, I've been talking about this for years, by Dr. Tara Brach, Tara BRACH, Dr. Tara Brach's RAIN practice, which is where you recognize what you're feeling, you allow what is feeling. Doesn't mean you accept it or like it. You just allow that this is here, this anger, this rage, this grief, this fear. You investigate where you feel that in your body. Your stomach is clenched, your hands are clammy, your trap muscles are tense, your jaw is clenched, and then you nurture it. And it can feel uncomfortable and you don't really understand it at first, but you start to learn how to send loving energy to that, wherever you're feeling that in your body. And so you can look up Dr. Tara Brach's RAIN practice. She has a bunch of them. I love the RAIN of self-compassion. You can find it on Spotify, her website, SoundCloud, YouTube for free. The Insight Timer app has some of them. I've been doing it since 2016 when Gregory got really sick, and to this day I use the RAIN practice when old, really uncomfortable feelings of rage and anger and all of those messy things are coming up. Let me think of anything else just sort of off the top of my head about what you can do, like so looking for support groups. Looking for grants. I also looked for grants for 5 years until I got a grant to therapy. And that was, my neighbor recommended the therapist because I was just open in general in my life about the fact that I needed help. So I got the grant after 5 years of looking, a grant for free therapy. And at that time, my neighbor happened to recommend a therapist. And so I wound up seeing that is who the therapist was. And so again, I talked about this in another video. I had to really accept that I wasn't going to get to buy the clothes that I wanted to wear to express myself through style. And I wasn't going to get to do the socializing, extracurricular activities or travels, or really I wasn't going to get to go to grad school or all of these things that I wanted to do with my resources because I had to save my own life. And whatever you need to sacrifice and give up in the name of your healing, it's worth it. And getting to the other side, I will be 38 years old in July. And there's a part of me going like, I can't believe that I am only 37 and I have gone through this extraordinary, indescribable level of pain and suffering and despair, darkness, the ideation of not wanting to be on this planet. And this is for another video, but I will say, let me say it this way. I have found forgiveness for the people who abandoned me at my time of greatest need. I have found forgiveness for the people who blamed, shamed, judged, and gossiped about me and abused me and traumatized me in my time of greatest need. And I want to make a disclaimer that I am not saying that you need to do that. I needed to feel and embody and express the rage and the pain and the unfairness and all of the things that I suppressed and stuffed down all through my childhood, all through my teen years, all through my early 20s, and all of the people. Let me not say that. Let me not say that part. I needed to feel all of that before I could get to forgiveness. And I am now, after all these years of allowing myself to express all of that rage and anger and grief and disappointment and all of those things, the shame and blame, I actually pray for the people whose actions cause me the most harm, because now that I'm seeing more clearly and thinking more clearly, nobody who abandons or blames or judges or gossips about somebody in their darkest hour has peace on the inside. There's just no way. There's just no way that somebody can be cruel to somebody and kick them while they're down and have peace in their heart. And so whatever maybe a way to say it is, I don't think that you can be connected to your own spirit or the greater creator, the greater Holy Spirit. I don't think that you can be connected to that and be cruel to somebody in their time of greatest need. And so it took a lot of practice and a lot of resistance and a lot of pain to get to a point where I actually genuinely pray for The people whose actions cause me the most harm, I pray for their connection to themselves, their healing, their peace, their prosperity. Did I say health and wellness and safety and home and family connection? Like I genuinely, and the beautiful thing about that is that's who I was before all of this happened. I love God. I love God. I always did. And I love people, and I always have wanted to just love and be loved. And so when I was so bereft and angry and enraged, I had all of this additional grief of like, I lost myself. I'm not sweet and loving now. I'm this like angry person that I don't recognize. And it was so painful to lose myself on top of losing family relationships, community relationships, colleague relationships. I mean, it was just, it was fucking unthinkable. There is light at the end of the tunnel. You just keep going through that dark tunnel. You just, and it's not just, right? I am sending you so much love. I know that some of you watching this may feel so alone, and in the middle of the night when it's dark and scary, you may feel so alone. And I used to hate this when people would say this to me years ago, but you're not alone in how you're feeling. It may be very real and valid that you are going through this alone in your day-to-day experience, but you are not alone in what you're feeling. There are a lot of people who have been neglected and abandoned and judged and shamed and blamed and gossiped about in their grief. And if you can please hold on, it doesn't even have to be one day at a time, one breath at a time, 1 hour at a time. If you can't shower, get you some of the, if you're so depressed and burnt out that you can't shower, get you some of those shower cloths. They have like in the hospital, they have these cloths, like you just wet the cloth and you can just wipe yourself down. Eating something, doesn't matter what it is better than eating nothing. I don't care if it's fast food. I am here today because I survived on McDonald's at one time. Whatever you need to do, please stay with us. If you are thinking about not staying with us, this is where I get emotional. We need you here. We need you here. You are in the middle of your testimony, and I am sorry if you're in that dark place, and I am sorry if you're not supported, and I am sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry for all of the secondary losses and feeling like maybe you've lost yourself. Please hold on. Thank you for listening. I am sending you so much love, and there will be more. Please find help wherever you can find help.